Welcome back to the Bearded Nerd Podcast. I'm Brian, your host, and today we're going to talk about a real challenge that affects a lot of us. How do we run a TTRPG session when you're absolutely short on time or you're running on fumes? Maybe you've had a rough week. Maybe work has been really stressful and you've had to put in overtime. Maybe the kids have kept you up all night long. Or maybe life is just, lifing. But the game is scheduled, the group is excited to play, and you don't want to have to cancel again. So, how do you show up, lead a great session, and still enjoy yourself while your prep time is nearly zero and your energy bar is flashing red? Well, in this episode, we're going to tackle that, and I'm going to show you from personal experience how I run sessions with nearly zero prep time and when my personal energy is just at an all-time low. So, without further ado, let's jump into this episode. First and foremost, let's acknowledge the struggle. We've all been there. As a GM and as players, but specifically as a GM, we often think that we need the perfect prep and we need to be in a perfect situation all the time. We need full creative batteries to be fully charged to run a game. But you know what the truth is? Your players aren't showing up for your spreadsheets. They're not showing up for your maps. They're not showing up for all those minis and intricacies. They're showing up for connection, fun, and a good story. One night, actually, I remember I came home from work, and at this time, my son was probably 2 to 3 months old, and we had a Tuesday night game that I ran for the moderators on Discord. I really didn't have anything planned. It was pretty rough, I'm not going to lie. I didn't have any prep time, I didn't have any notes, and my sleep schedule was completely messed up, so I was exhausted. And I really wanted to cancel. But instead, we had a great session. I ran a session where they were in the Feywild and they were kind of going through like the dreamscape of the Feywild and exploring that part, especially a new section of the Feywild that had a library. So it was just really great. And you know what? We all had fun. So you don't have to necessarily be perfect. You need to be present. So my very first tip that I would recommend is to be honest with yourself. Sit down, whether it's with a journal or with a piece of paper and a pen, doesn't matter, but sit down and talk to your players and have a conversation almost with yourself. And talk to yourself and tell yourself and ask yourself really, am I in a place where I can run a weekly game? If not, then ask yourself, can I run a bi-weekly game? And if not, can I run a monthly game? And then you go from there. If you tell yourself, I can't run a weekly game, but I can play in a weekly game, then that's a different conversation. That is a conversation with players where you say, hey, I'm finding myself in this headspace and I'm finding myself here. Can you all help me out? Right? That's where our friends can come in and help each other out. We can help one another. But if you say, you know what, I am perfectly fine with running a bi-weekly game, then there you go. Now you've opened up a little bit more time and you continue forward. And with a bi-weekly game, that's a little bit easier. You take the week off from gaming to prep for the next session. And then that week that you're on, you just do your final prep and you're good to go. So again, the week that you play, you're just preparing for that for that actual game, right? Which is just, hey, is everyone going to play? Great. All right, cool. Having the snacks ready, having minis and tokens and whatever you want to use ready to go. And then the next week when you don't play, that's when you do a majority of your prep. Okay. So just throwing that out there that you have to have a conversation with yourself and with your party. If you can only run a game once a month, same thing applies. But you talk to your players and say, hey, I can play every week, but running a game every week is just too much. Can someone else run a game? And maybe now you create a whole new system where players sit behind the GM screen and run a game. But again, that's a conversation you have to have not only with yourself, but you have to have with the players. Meanwhile, what you want to do is you want to start implementing tools and techniques that it's going to help you prepare more efficiently. So, one of the best approaches is the lift and shift method. What's the lift and shift? Well, it's a time-saving prep system where you basically take previous content, modules, one-shots, or ideas and just shift them into the current session with light adjustments. This is how I use it. I'll take old NPCs, rename them, and provide either similar or different motivations. You can change their accent, their loyalties, or their background, and pretty much now have a different character. You can take a map from a previous session or an image that represents a particular sentiment or feeling, emotion, or landscape and reuse it. Players won't usually care if it's from like 3 months ago. They just care that it feels new. I have a PowerPoint with all the images of Legalheim, which is the main city where the players are in. Those images have not changed in years because what it does is that it conveys a message of, one, stability and foundation, being that the city's never changing, but two, I just focus on evoking new feelings versus, changing a detail of this one particular building. It's not needed. Who cares? It's about how they feel and where they're at in the session and in the story. Lastly, I also repurpose encounters. Part of the lift and shift approach is considering or taking even encounters from the past and rehashing them. Instead of a forest ambush, maybe this week it's an alleyway and that's where the ambush happens. Maybe instead of goblins that ambush you in the forest, it's henchmen, thugs, things of that nature. Heck, you can even just change the setting, the location, and the stakes, but keep it as goblins. So instead of the goblins ambushing the party for food and materials because they're desperate, they don't really want to hurt the party, they're just desperate. This week, it's an alleyway, and it's still goblins, but the stakes are more intense. It's not for food, it's for what they know and the things or the people that they're connected to. Now there's a completely different stake at hand, and now it changes the dynamic. You may ask yourself, though, how does this work and why does it work? Well, I'll tell you. It saves you hours on prep time. Just by lifting and shifting, all the good time that you invested is paying in compound interest back to you because you don't have to prep something else. It also keeps the story consistent. If I share images of Legalheim to my party, they know that they consistently know that Legalheim looks like this and it feels like this during this time of the year. And maybe it evokes other feelings, but it is consistent 80 to 90% of the time. Lastly, it feels intentional. If you connect it to the world's narrative, it will feel intentional. Players aren't going to necessarily care about every little detail. Although it's cool, you want to make sure that you are being consistent and that you're being intentional with your prep. For example, I once used a camping outside kind of tent structure for a battle. And then sessions later, about 2 or 3, I reused it for a role play scenario where other members of the party came back to that site and role played it with a particular NPC. Didn't have to really change the map. I just changed the stakes. I changed the scenario without changing the landscape. It didn't take me too long to do that. It pretty much was a 5-minute long decision of, I'm going to put the NPC here, and then this is the type of dialogue that they're going to have. And we ran with it. It was consistent with the story. It felt real, and it saved me so much time on prep to the point where that conversation is still a thing that we talk about outside of the game. Another great way that you can save time and energy, especially when you're low on energy, is let the players carry the narration. Let them carry more of the narrative during that session. And how do you do this? Well, there's a couple of ways. One, you ask open-ended questions. For example, what's your character doing in the city before the job starts? And the player will ask, or rather tell you. How do you know this NPC? Well, the player character will tell you and think of it and come up with it. And once you put those open-ended questions and kind of place the ball in their court, they'll carry the conversation. I've done that plenty of times. I've said, what does your character think about this? What is your character's perspective on that matter? What does your character feel? I ask them those questions so that they take the lead. Even when I'm high on energy, I still ask those questions because, again, player-driven gameplay is at the core of this, right? So, again, number 1, ask open-ended questions. Number 2, lean into improv. Let the players build the world with you. Let them co-create the world with you. This is not just your world, but it's their world. If you need prep done, if you need some world building done, ask your players, hey, where does your character come from? Can you build this part out? I want to see your perspective. And let them do it. And then lastly, give them a clear choice on what to do and how to do it, but let them debate it. You can rest and just observe while they scheme and strategize. I've done that many times, specifically with my Star Wars 5e game. It is a night game at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we have folks from around the world playing. And I'll be honest, I'll have to drink a couple of cups of coffee to get through that because I am tired. I love the game. It's a fantastic game, but I'm tired. So there are times where I step back and say, well, wait a minute. Let them drive the game. And that's so important. Let them. Because sometimes it's a control thing. So allow yourself to give them the opportunity to lead the way. It's a great thing to do because this gives players agency. It allows them some breathing room, but it also allows you breathing room. And it really enforces collaborative storytelling. That is probably the best part of D&D, right? Is the collaborative storytelling aspect. So why not let them collaborate? Now, let's say that you've taken all this into consideration. I want you to try something else. I want you to use short, focused session goals. You don't need an epic arc every session. Especially when you're drained, you should aim small. One decision, one challenge, one cool NPC interaction. Now, especially if you run online sessions, using short focused session goals will save you a whole bunch of time and energy. Here's a format that you could use. For example, you can have a 10-minute recap where you go over what happened last session from your perspective and then from the perspective of others. Again, that touches back into what we said earlier with asking those open-ended questions and giving them choices. From there, you can spend about 30 minutes to about 45 minutes or even an hour on the particular challenge or exploration or combat that you want to go through. I would actually even leave combat for another session when you have more energy and really just stick to like a role play or an exploration segment, but you get the idea. You'd have 30 minutes to 60 minutes on the meat of the actual session and let the players drive it. And then you can end it with about 15 to 20 minutes for your resolution or a cliffhanger. This is a manageable format that even though you may be tired or just mentally drained, it keeps the pacing tight. Heck, if I'm low on time and energy, there's been times where I've had one-on-one sessions, or I've had dream sequence sessions, or we've worked on downtime activities. Downtime activities is probably the best example of all this kind of player-driven, one decision, one challenge, short-focused examples, right? Because with downtime activities, they are actively working on things that they want to do or accomplish in game. So you're giving them the reins, but they're asking you as the GM to kind of help guide them and provide some of the, scenery, so to speak, the fluff of the downtime activities, if you will. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't provide digital tools to help you save time on prep, especially saving brain space. So Donjon is a great tool for instant NPCs, dungeons, and quests. Kassoon or Fantasy Name Generator, great tool for names. Like, I need this type of name. Okay, I can type it in and bam. AI tools, ChatGPT, things like that are great for generating encounter ideas, rumors, and prompts within seconds. And again, this isn't to necessarily touch on the use of AI imagery or AI as stealing artist, whatever. This is more of a prompt service that allows you to kind of have a one-on-one or back and forth with a tool that will help you kind of, or challenge you even in various seconds. Heck, think of it like this. If you use something like ChatGPT to say, hey, come up or create some sort of list of rumors that my players can interact with in this town, it'll pop it out. Great. You can use them, you can edit them, whatever you want, but it's like a more advanced version of Donjon and some of these other tools that I mentioned. Is just scouring the internet within seconds based upon what it's been taught. Anyway, besides that AI rant, use those tools at your disposal. Roll20 and Owlbear Rodeo have great battle maps that you can generate pretty quickly. Now, from an analog perspective, make sure that you have a grab bag, so to speak, of maps, monsters, and NPCs that's either printed out and ready to go or in a specific file on your computer. Keep sticky notes or one-page world references. Keep D6 random roll tables. I've made plenty of them that you can check out on Instagram at Brian the Bearded Nerd, where you could get a bunch of different cool resources that are just there. It will have various names, factions, and themes, but these one-page world references are great for those just quick grab type shortcuts and tools. Those are so worth it. Use these random tables, use index cards, and write down rumors, locations, and hooks that you can just grab. They also sell plenty of decks that have rumors, they have stories, hooks, things of that nature. I personally love using the deck of stories. And if you're curious on what the deck of stories is, it is a really useful tool that allows you to create worlds, create story hooks, plots, pretty much everything you want in a matter of minutes. If you're interested in learning more, I'm going to actually place the link in the show notes below. And if you like it, you can purchase it using my discount code. So saves you a little bit of money and it earns me a little bit of money to pay for the podcast. But either way, I highly recommend those type of tools because it is just so useful and it saves you time. Now, lastly, I think that you as a GM need to understand and know when to call it short. It is okay for you to say or to think that an hour or two session is acceptable. Not every session needs to be 4 hours long. When you're low on energy, it's okay to text the group and say, hey, instead of meeting in person this week, can we run a 1 or 2 hour flashback session? Or can we run a 2 hour session where we focus on downtime activities online? You can even text and say, hey, especially if you use Discord, which I highly recommend you use Discord versus having a group text, and saying, hey, can we hop on Discord for an hour this week and just talk and just go through downtime activities? Or can we do a little bit of text-based RP? That way, you can just text when you're on the toilet. You can text when you're eating dinner. You can role play pretty much whenever. You're in a really boring meeting at work, role play. You're in a weird confrontation with your neighbor, I don't know, role play on Discord. I don't know your life, and I'm not going to assume that I do, but it's okay to say that. It's okay to do a split screen kind of solo moment for a player. You can end it on a strong cliffhanger no matter what. And I want you to take that into consideration. I want you to really take that as a tool. I've definitely run the dream suite sequence session for my whole party at one point. I've let them explore their fears and their secrets. And I typically just sit back and enjoy them role playing this whole time. It's a really low effort for me and it's a high payoff for them. So let's recap really quick. Number 1, I want you to acknowledge the struggle. It's okay to be tired and it's okay to not want to spend your brain power on something like this. But number 2, I want you to consider the lift and shift approach. Save your prep time by having an efficient system. 3, I want you to embrace player-driven gameplay. Ask your players open-ended questions and let them world build, let them story tell, let them take the reins, so to speak. Use short focused session goals when you are drained for time and energy. It's one decision, one challenge, and one really cool NPC interaction. Don't forget to leverage tools like ChatGPT. Don't forget to leverage tools like Roll20 or random roll tables that people provide, including myself. And lastly, know when to call it. Know when to say, hey, I can't do a 4-hour session. Can we do 2 hours online? Can we do a text-based roleplay session instead on Discord? But either way, keep those things in mind, because the truth is, running a game when you're short on time and energy doesn't make you a lazy GM. It makes you a real one. Life is messy, chaotic, and unpredictable. But the love of storytelling keeps us coming back to the table. So whether you're running on coffee and vibes, or you've had 5 minutes to prep between work and dinner, remember this: simple, player-driven, focused sessions can be just as powerful as the most elaborate set piece. Let your table be flexible. Let the story breathe. If you found this helpful, consider supporting the podcast by subscribing to the podcast on your favorite app, and or check out my Patreon, where I share pre-made plug-and-play content for GMs like you who need fast and flexible prep solutions. Lastly, share your stories down below of how you save time, but more importantly, how you run games when you're short on time and when you're low on energy. Remember, folks, be kind and compassionate to one another. Much love, and as always, keep gaming.